Well, we are on World War III watch. It's like a crock pot of war rhetoric right now, all thrown into one big pot. Just a few minutes ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping threw his support behind Russian President Vladimir Putin and the security of the Russian state. A congressional report out this morning warning that a war with Russia and China is on the horizon and the U.S. should be prepared. Of course, we covered last night U.S. Foreign Affairs Committee, Committee Chairman Mike McCaul, authorizing President Biden to use force in a war against Iran. The Biden regime has also discussed using military force if Lebanon-based Hezbollah attacks Israel with rockets. All of these things unfolding in a World War III watch right now. We figured we'd bring in former UN weapons inspector, former U.S. Marine Scott Ritter. So I guess maybe we start with just a few minutes ago, Xi Jinping throwing security support behind Russia. And what does this mean with this new congressional report warning that Russia and China, a war with both of those countries simultaneously, is on the horizon?
This is bad news for those in the United States who are trying to resurrect Cold War fantasies of being able to wage and win two wars simultaneously. You know, back when I was in the Marine Corps, we actually had a posture of fighting 2.5 wars. The way the United States was configured militarily, we could fight a war in Europe using NATO and defeat the Soviet Union. At the same time, we could fight a major war in the Pacific, probably North Korea, and defeat the North Korean Chinese threat, and still have sufficient force to engage in a smaller war, say in the Middle East, where we would fight a holding action until we won one of the two major wars and diverted the resources in to win the half war. And we had the forces to do that. We trained to do it. We were ready to do it. And thank God we never had to do it, but I think we could have done it. Today, we went from 2.5 to 2 wars. Today, we're down to literally one war, and we can't even do one war. Let's be honest. If we went to war right now in Europe against Russia, we don't have sufficient military force to prevail. We can fight a war. We can't win a war. If we went to war against China, we could fight a war, but we can't win it. And that's even if we bring the totality of our conventional strength into play. And now we're talking about doing it against both Russia and China. The costs that are going to be associated with this are phenomenal. First of all, it's going to require a massive expansion of our conventional military power. The United States Army just had a shortfall in recruiting. They are literally tens of thousands of personnel short of what their authorized manning strength is, which means instead of expanding the U.S. Army, they have to shrink it. They don't have enough men or women to fill the ranks. And so certain units, certain capabilities are being taken down to zero because you don't have manpower to do this. And now Congress is talking about beefing up with what? Are you going to go to a draft? Have you run that by the American people? Is it really smart for the United States to talk about fighting a two war? Do we know what that means? It means that America has to leave our continental fortress, go across the oceans to fight a war over there in their backyard. In their backyard. That means we're taking Russia on, in a confrontation in Europe where Russia's logistics are literally right there next to them. They're supplying themselves from interior lines of communication. We will have to extend ourselves. We don't have sufficient logistical buildup in Europe anymore. It would cost billions to do that. That means we have to sustain from the United States with lengthy supply lines. It's literally suicidal. So this is insane. They're talking about potential conflict with Iran. We can't fight Iran. We don't have the forces to do that. We fought the Gulf War in 1991 by having friendly ports and airfields that we could bring our ships into and offload in an uncontested fashion and land and offload troops. How are we going to do that in a war with Iran? They're going to blow up every port, blow up every airfield. It means now we have to do a forcible entry into an Iranian port, Chabahar, Bandar Abbas. We don't have the force structure to do that. Iran has missiles that'll sink our ships before we get there. They're parking 2 aircraft carrier battle groups off the coast of Lebanon with a 2,000 man amphibious ready group to fight Hezbollah. Hezbollah is 100,000 men, highly trained, dug in to the hills of southern Lebanon who have been preparing for this fight. We have gone insane. Let me just make it very clear. America can't fight and win a war anywhere in the world right now against any power that has any military capability. We're that weak. We are literally that weak.
The United States has released videos of some interceptions between American warplanes with Chinese aircraft in the past 2 years. The Pentagon said that more than 180 intercepts have occurred between the two in international airspace, which is more than the total intercepts recorded over the previous decade. The U.S. military officials have called this trend concerning, calling out China for its increasingly dangerous behavior in the skies. However, the officials have not commented on how many of those calls were unsafe and unprofessional, which is standard military term used when the interactions are actually dangerous. The American officials say that they released the footage to call out Chinese behavior. Washington claims that such incidents are part of a larger trend of regional intimidation by Beijing, adding that such interceptions could accidentally lead to a conflict.
Is Israel about to descend into a civil war? Not Israelis fighting Palestinians or the 17 factions on the Palestinian side that we've been covering here on the show. No, you know that story. You know that part of the story. What you might not know is Israelis fighting Israelis, a civil war in Israel. Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media, can you unpack this for us?
What's happening inside Israel is really it's on the brink of a civil war, where you have the Azov battalion, the Azovites of Israel, which are called the Kahanists, followers of a U.S.-born rabbi named Meir Kahane, who was killed in the early 90s. This guy is the ideological father of everything happening in Israel right now. The national security minister who heads the police has just given them thousands of weapons to act as militias that will collaborate with the state forces. The communications minister has just passed legislation to imprison any Israeli citizen who is accused of undermining national morale on the orders of that national security minister. The government can now imprison Israeli citizens simply for the wrong opinion, and then is giving weapons to these extreme right-wing militias. So I actually interviewed the only anti-Zionist Jewish member of the Knesset, Israel's parliament. His name is Ofer Kassif. He is the most hated man in Israel by these Kahanists. So take a listen to what he had to say about what he said is the coming civil war in Israel.
If you don't do something now to stop the fascist militias, what we've seen thus far is nothing comparing to what we are going to see. Israel proper, not the West Bank, not Gaza Strip, Israel proper. The streets of Israel from north to the south are going to be colored in red. Massive rivers of blood are going to be there if you don't stop them. The writing is on the wall, written in blood already. If you don't do something, what you've seen in other civil wars in the recent times, going to be repeated in Israel.
South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Kim Gon has warned that North Korea and Russia will pay a price for any military cooperation.
Amid reports of an arms deal between Russia and North Korea, on Saturday the White House accused North Korea of supplying Russia with a shipment of weapons. The officials also released satellite images to prove the claims. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said that the US has information that North Korea has delivered more than 1,000 containers of military equipment and munitions to Russia in recent weeks. Top White House officials stated that North Korea sent weapons to Russia and described it as a troubling development. The US raised concerns about the expanded military relationship between the two countries. To support the claims, the White House also released a collection of satellite images purportedly showing shipments originating from a North Korean ammunition depot being loaded onto Russian-flagged vessel and subsequently transported by rail to a storage facility near Russia's southwestern border. John Kirby said that the US condemned the DPRK or Democratic People's Republic of Korea for providing Russia with this military equipment, which will be used to attack Ukrainian cities, kill Ukrainian civilians, and further Russia's illegitimate war.